everyone, and welcome back to the new and improved Deep Dive with Dollface podcast. However, this time, to spice it up a little bit, I'm actually joined with a co-host. This is my lovely co-host and boyfriend, Tobias. And today, to start off our new little adventure, I wanted to introduce you to this podcast because it's fun to do things as a pair, and because this case is one that you are very familiar with,
Unfortunately,
in fact.
so.
Yeah. Do you want to perhaps give a little introduction of why you are familiar with the case of Chris Benoit, but also why do you know all about it?
Well, I know all about Chris Benoit, unfortunately, because I'm a huge fan of WWE. And the weird part is I really got into it just after this case, probably around 2009.
How old would you have been in 2009?
5.
That makes me feel a little bit ill.
Yeah, but yeah, I probably got just after, which is, as we'll come on to later, they kind of wiped Chris Benoit from history. So I probably actually only found out who he was when I was probably about 14 years old. Because
Really?
Because they genuinely never talked about this man.
That's genuinely a little bit crazy.
Yeah, they never talked about him.
I mean, well, of course, I only got into wrestling and WWE because of you and Adam. Shout out to Adam. Hey, Adam, if you're watching this. Big up Adam. But yeah, you guys would like come back from uni and you'd be like, have you not covered Chris Benoit? And I'm like, who? I'm like, who are you talking about? Who is Chris Benoit? And then I looked into it and I was like, that's a little bit mad. That's a bit, that's bad. That's really bad. But like, the reason why I made a YouTube video on Chris Benoit is because you guys had badgered me to do it for months. And then even when I did do it, you guys still weren't satisfied because I misspoke in that video. Sorry, which is why I feel like it's even better to have you on this podcast.
So if we get it wrong, but
it's your fault too. Yeah, it's your fault as well. So, yeah, I just felt like this first episode of this new and improved podcast couldn't be anything better, you know, the two of us.
Eases me in.
You're into history as well. History's your forte, so... Yeah, should we just jump straight into it? Let's just get straight into it. So... I'm going to let Tobias take the reins here because the first section is we're going to talk about the beginnings of WWE, and who better to cover this section?
Benoit's introduction to WWE.
Well, yeah, of course. That's what I meant. That's what I meant to say. I do apologise. So yeah, take the reins.
Yeah, so Tobias. I feel like before we get into Benoit and all of that, I think we really need to discuss wrestling as a starting point. But wrestling is... I mean, you can agree. What was your opinion before actually seeing it?
I had nothing. I didn't really have one.
Whereas now you can probably agree that it's like stage theatre.
Oh yeah, it's very like pantomime is the word I used to describe it.
It's stage
very
theatre,
pantomime.
You know it's fake,
but it's great.
They know it's fake,
but it's great.
But it's great.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, it wasn't. I mean, due to stuff like Benoit, it's a bit more family friendly and. You know, just
wasn't it
silly.
Yeah,
Whereas in the 90s, the one word to describe the 90s as a whole, as well as wrestling in the 90s, is extreme.
Okay.
And the big thing we're going to talk about is WWE, obviously, also known as WWF, so we might both get confused in that.
I know that it's the same thing. So if you hear Tobias mention WWF or WWE, just know it's the same thing. They'd like
got
change.
Sued by the charity, so they had to change the name. Yeah. But we'll also talk about ECW. Extreme Championship Wrestling, which was batshit. No better way to describe it. They jump off the roof of the building, set each other on fire. Like, it really encapsulates why something like Benoit happened.
I remember you guys made me watch one of the matches. I think it was a cage match. I don't remember who it was, but I just remember it was like the first time I think I'd had like a group of friends around, and you made me watch this like pretty horrendous match. And I remember you saying that like this is how it used to be before it was... sort of became family friendly. Yeah. Is that the era that we're going to refer to it as pre-Benoit?
That's probably the best way to describe. Well, I mean, because it's what happened, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, wrestling was just extreme. Is the best way to describe it. Every company was insane, but ECW was really prided itself on being that. And Benoit was part of that. So I think the three companies we're going to have to just, before we get into it, is ECW, WWE/WWF, and then WCW, which was WWE's biggest competitor in the 90s. Okay. So then everyone kind of flip-flopped between it before settling down somewhere.
The wrestlers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because it was... Competition made it better, because some would do that, some would do that. But Benoit himself was born in 1967 in Montreal, Canada. And then they started wrestling pretty much as soon as he could.
Mm-hmm.
He started in 1985 at Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling, which for any Canadian wrestler is really the place to go because the hearts of wrestling loyalty, especially in Canada. So it really was a great jumping point, which, if it didn't end as it did, would be a great career, to be fair. Because afterwards, for the next few years, he'd circulate between Canada, the US, in WCW, and then over in Japan in a couple of their promotions. And he'd kind of just make a routine of going to Japan. His visa would run out, so he'd come back for a couple of months while he applies, spending time either in Canada or US, and going back to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until about 1994 that he settled down and finally would do it like a 50-50 split. And that was with ECW.
Okay.
And then over in Japan. And ECW was really where he started to make a name for himself. And in the event November to Remember 1994, in the main event, he was fighting for the World Championship. And during it, he broke fellow wrestler Sabu's neck. In the middle of really showing how extreme.
Yeah, extreme.
And this was pretty much at the start because he went to throw him across the ring.
Okay.
And he kind of just telegraphed it wrong, so he landed wrong and broke his neck. And what would you think would happen to any boxer or UFC fighter's career?
They'd be taken out. It'd be ended, right?
You'd be done.
Yeah.
Your career would be you'd be a laughing stock. Well, our good friend Paul Heyman, who you know and love.
I know and love Paul. Well, I wouldn't say love, but yeah,
Paul
Paul
Heyman. He used to
Heyman.
run ECW. That was his.
Really?
That was his baby child.
Oh,
that's why he's so big now.
Right, I didn't know that.
Took him backstage, and instead of it ruining his career, decided now Benoit would be known as Crippler Benoit.
No. Oh my god!
And that
right,
would be his
okay.
thing, but he broke Sabu. Sabu was like a extreme wrestling legend. He did shit like this all the time.
Okay.
So if you broke Sabu's neck, you've done something.
Wow.
And that kind of kickstarted his career into just being not like, he wasn't The Rock or he wasn't The Undertaker, but he was just this kind of this nutter who people would put on shows and like this crazy guy who breaks people's necks. And this continued until he left in 1995 because he had some visa issues because he's Canadian, so he needed a visa to work over. And then, so his next stop was he went to WCW. And this was really when WCW stopped being just like a smaller brand and really was the competitors to WWE.
Okay.
They were getting about the same viewership, did better sometimes, did worse, really just equal. Like how a competitor should be viewed, And he was immediately introduced as the Crippler Chris Benoit.
Wow.
So he was known outside of ECW now, kind of that was his thing.
Right.
In the same way of like if John Cena appeared somewhere, you can't see him. Like it was just his synonymous thing. You can't. And he wasn't just the Crippler Benoit who was just kind of lurking around. He was in the main event scene. He was with wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Randy Savage. So he was immediately
big. Yeah, he was
shot to the top.
One of the big ones. How would you compare him to like the modern day wrestlers now?
I think I'd probably say. I think when I get to the end, I feel more confident.
Okay.
I'd probably say like a Jey Uso.
Really?
Like he's not
one of the main,
Cody
but
Rhodes,
yeah.
But he is up there.
Yeah.
Like he's always doing shit, and he'll always be in the main event.
Yeah.
But he's not the main guy.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he came over, was with these legends, and then had quite a decent career in WCW. He won their second best title a few times, won the tag title a couple of times, had legendary rivals with Kevin Sullivan, who we'll get onto later, and Booker T. And he left in 2000 due to creative issues.
Okay.
However, just weirdly, they tried to, as like a bargaining tactic, give him the world title.
Right.
As like a West Side so we'll give you the world title.
Okay.
But he left the next day anyway. So his first world title he ever won
was kind of handed
to him, which is positive and negative. It shows how big he was.
Yeah.
That you can't just give it to him as a bargaining tactic. But also, he never really earned the world title from this point. So it's probably the last thing you need to do.
Yeah.
He was a huge wrestler, could do anything, but you didn't get there.
Yeah.
Because if you're the world title, they trust you. You can represent the brands. And then that was 2000 was when he joined the WWE. And that's really when I think he went from being a decent wrestler, who people knew, to being that guy. Like he was, people would name biggest wrestler in WWE and they'd say stuff like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chris Benoit.
But do you know what? In saying that, there's probably a few people that have like dipped their toes into WWE that probably have no idea who we're talking about. Like genuinely, they're probably like, "Why? If he's won all these titles, he's done all this. Like,
probably heard those
why
names.
have I never heard of him before?" And there is a reason for that we're going to come on to later. But continue.
So immediately upon getting into WWE, he moved up with other WCW guys who just left because they left kind of as a group because they decided they didn't want to be it anymore and they wanted to move over. And including that was a bunch of WWE, including Eddie Guerrero, one of the biggest wrestlers of this era, Rey Mysterio's best friend.
Is he still alive?
No.
Okay.
He died in 2005.
Okay.
Due to steroid issue because wrestling at the time.
Yeah.
And immediately upon joining, he was teamed with Triple H, who was WWE champion at the time. So he been in the biggest rival, which Vince McMahon didn't like rival. If you'd left the rival and come to you, he'd kind of put you at the bottom. Just as a, you should have been with me the whole time. Whereas Benoit moved over and he immediately put him with the WWE champion.
Wow, okay.
Teamed him up with him immediately on the face of the company. This big guy. And this kind of just kept going. He would always have his kind of career, so not rival, not ally, just pairing, was Kurt Angle. Someone who many would consider the greatest wrestler of all time. And he'd constantly either have rivalries or teams or just storylines with him, and they'd always it for years. So that always kept him in the limelight, someone who everyone called one of the greatest of all time. In 2004, he would win the Royal Rumble, going on to main event WrestleMania with Triple H and win the world title, finally winning a world title. So at that point, he'd kind of done it. He was,
everyone knows, everyone knows who you
everything he could. He main event WrestleMania, the biggest show for the year, the biggest show in wrestling. Won against Triple H, probably the biggest wrestler in the world at the time. And he'd done it. And then just as time went on, he'd kind of have that level of career again. He'd win the Intercontinental Champion a couple of times, have some great feuds, win the tag title, until it got to 2007.
So obviously, as you know, if you've like seen any WWE or wrestling performances, they get pretty creative with the storylines. Like I know the one that I've actually gotten into was the AJ Lee, not AJ Lee, is it AJ Lee? And CM Punk, all that.
Oh, the Dom and Rhea.
It's great, it's great. It's very creative.
That's what I'm saying here is relationships is always, it's the easiest side.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone relates to it.
And a lot of like, I didn't realise this, but a lot of the wrestlers are husband and wife. Like they're married, yes. It's great. It's really sweet. So in 1997, as like, again, it was a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Erotic, a little bit more raunchy.
Risque.
Yeah, raunchy, risque with their storylines because it was the 90s. No one really policed it that much, did they? No. And in 1997, Chris actually gets involved in a storyline with another woman.
When he was back in WCW.
Yeah, when he was back in WWE, when he was back in whatever you said.
Yeah, WCW.
Yeah. He gets involved in a storyline with another woman wrestler, and this woman is named Nancy Sullivan, who is actually Kevin Sullivan's wife, who is another wrestler who you mentioned earlier.
One of his biggest rivals.
Yeah, now Nancy had been married like a couple of times before this, but Kevin seemed to be the husband that she'd like settled with.
They've been with for a while.
Yeah, they've been together for a while. And in this storyline, it goes that Nancy would leave Kevin for Chris, but it was all a bit. None of it was real.
Like with Rhea Ripley and Dom Mysterio,
of course.
Where they're just friends.
Yeah.
They're making a story.
But Kevin, Nancy's husband, had instructed Chris and Nancy to make this look as real as possible.
Kevin wrote WCW.
Yeah.
He had his hand in it.
Exactly.
Like,
he instructed them to book hotel rooms and hold hands in public to keep up this storyline, which, I'm not being funny, just looking you up and down right now, I could not, I couldn't bear that. I couldn't bear to do, never mind to be involved in that, but to allow you to go near another woman.
They did this in the 2000s. You're Matt Hardy.
Yeah.
So Matt Hardy was dating Lita, a women's wrestler, like one of, like the inspiration for AJ Lee, like huge, biggest women's wrestler in the world, well in America at the time, and the kind of rivalry was supposed between Matt Hardy and a wrestler called Edge, one of John Cena's career rivals, one of the biggest wrestlers at the time as well, and it was Matt was dating Lita, was real life dating Lita, and they were going to have this kind of rivalry. Lita cheated on Matt with Edge. However, Vince McMahon thought that's good talent. So just kept it going.
Also, for context, you should probably mention who, like, Vince McMahon is.
Oh.
He's, like, the guy that
Vince
pulled
McMahon,
the strings.
WWE was founded by Vince's father.
Yeah.
And then Vince kind of took it from this small, independent, local wrestling
He's a piece of shit.
He is a piece of shit, yeah.
He's a piece of shit. That's all. That's kind of all you really need to know.
But he grew it to be
as big as it is. Yeah. So, lo and behold, they're having this, like, on-screen affair, and it spills over into real life. Yeah. And of course it does, because you're
spending
all that time holding hands with someone, sharing hotel rooms with someone, and it spills over into real life and you're shocked.
It's your job.
Yeah, and you wanted your wife to do this. So, Kevin, I don't have any sympathy for you for Nancy deciding to actually go on to divorce him because she wanted a bit of Chris. Yeah. She fancied a bit of Chris.
She divorced him though.
Yeah, really she divorced. Yeah, really those two divorced, and she married Chris Benoit in 2000. Even going on to have
engaged for a while.
They were engaged. So this affair began in 1997, and they were engaged in 1997 as well. So the engagement was quick, and then they got married 3 years later in the year 2000. But interestingly enough, even after they were married, Chris continued to refer to Nancy as his fiancée. Yeah, kind of weird. There's definitely a reason behind that. Someone was pulling the strings behind that. I don't know why, but
story thing.
Yeah, there's
something Vince would do.
Yeah,
well, you can't bring reality too much into your job.
There's no reason for that. And the couple even went on to have a son together in February 2000, named Daniel. And but who was Nancy?
Well, women's wrestling in the 90s isn't, well, in the United States anyway, isn't really where you see it now. You don't get your Rhea Ripley's or your Becky Lynch's, who will go out, main event a show, put on a 30-minute match that's as good, if not better, than the men's. At the point...
Tell him. you tell him. The women do it. I say this to you all the time. The women do it better.
Yeah, Becky Lynch isn't just the best wrestler on planet Earth. I'm not just saying it. Sports Illustrated saying it.
Debatable.
That's a Becky Lynch joke for you there. But yeah, so women's wrestlers weren't going out and, having a one-on-one fight. If they did, it wasn't a wrestling fight. It was more like a catty bar fight as opposed to an actual match. So instead, Nancy kind of got her career as a manager, similar to how Paul Heyman is now, where he'll be on the sidelines, helping them out, pulling some bullshit to make sure that they win. But she went under the incredible, thoughtful and respectful ring name Woman.
Love that for her.
And she started a career with Sullivan in ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling.
Kevin Sullivan, the guy that she later married,
she started being his manager, helping him cheat and helping him to win matches, but then she'd go on to represent the Sandman in ECW, who was kind of their guy. He was like their John Cena, like their main guy who, you think of ECW, you think of the Sandman. You think of him and Sabu, who Chris injured. And she was a major part of all his feuds. Any woman who was involved in a feud he was with, she'd always be in the fighting line of, or just any match he'd have, she'd, throw something into the ring or distract the ref to make sure that he'd win. And then this continued even after she left ECW and she went to WCW, because she'd do the same job again back with Sullivan. But she'd also represent Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage and Ric Flair. So similar to Chris, she was kind of having this immediate limelight with the biggest wrestlers of all time.
Wow.
Because Hulk and Ric Flair were the people who...
So would you say for like a woman wrestler at the time that she was relatively well known?
Yeah. To the point that a lot of people say that she should be retroactively put in the Hall of Fame.
We'll come back to that. Because I have opinions on that decision. Yeah, that's crazy. Basically, all you need to know is that these two were seemingly sort of a golden couple in WWE. They've been...
This is what happens in wrestling.
Yeah, they get together
on the road with someone. You're gonna...
Yeah, everything's fine. All is well and good until 2007, June 2007, where things go the worst
South
that they could,
is not.
The worst that they could actually go. So let's jump to the 23rd of June 2007 at 3:30 p.m, where Chris Benoit leaves a voice note for a close friend called Chavo Guerrero, which is
Eddie's cousin.
Okay.
Eddie Guerrero's cousin.
Yeah. And this voice note had said that Nancy and Daniel both had food poisoning. Now, again, food poisoning is an absolute nightmare.
But it's the classic excuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you don't want to go to work.
Food poisoning. and that he would be late for that night's house show in Beaumont, Texas. Guerrero ended up calling Chris back and found that he sounded, he wasn't himself, he was tired, he was groggy, and he confirmed everything that he had said in his voice message. So he basically just reiterated everything, but he seemed fine, other than being, tired and groggy. Food poisoning itself, especially if you've got a 7-year-old kid and your wife, you have to do both. As a man as well, men are shit at doing things like that, so you can imagine.
He's probably a broken mess, his body's probably just in pain.
Yeah, of course. Now, Chavo was initially really concerned about Benoit's tone and demeanour, but he thought nothing of it. He kind of brushed it off, because he called him back 12 minutes later. But this time, Chris did not answer, and Chavo actually ended up leaving a voicemail for Chris asking to call him back, which Chris actually did around 14 minutes later, and he stated that he hadn't answered the call because he was actually on the phone with Delta Airlines changing his flight because he needed to get to Texas. So he lived in Georgia, and he obviously had to try and go all the way to Texas. So, again, reasonable excuse. If, that sounds nothing.
Family zone he's trying to work around.
Nothing's piquing any interest as of yet. And Chris was also able to sort of explain his demeanour by saying that he was stressed with Nancy and Daniel having food poisoning, which again, just said, food poisoning's a nightmare at the best of times, especially when you're caring for someone that is throwing up everywhere. Yeah. It's an absolute ball ache. And Chavo then replied with, quote, "All right, man, if you need to talk, I'm here for you." And Chris actually ended the conversation by saying, "Chavo, I love you," which he wasn't known for doing that. Chavo has actually said publicly that Chris did sound off that day, as we've mentioned, and he found the fact that Chris said that he loved him to be... It set an alarm bell off, but he was like, maybe he's just tired.
But it's the cripple of Chris Benoit.
Yeah, he's showing a little bit of...
Not
weakness. Weakness. Yeah. He said the word unsettled. It left him feeling unsettled. And another co-worker who actually travelled quite often with Chris actually called him outside the George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. And this co-worker had said that Chris answered and told them that Nancy was actually vomiting blood, and that Daniel had then started to vomit as well. Again, vomiting blood on food poisoning, I don't think that's normal, is it?
No.
Unless you've been
that's
poisoned. Hospital. Yeah, that's a hospital job there. But that night, Chris did actually fail to show up for the house show in Beaumont completely. So he said he was changing his flight. He very evidently didn't. He just straight up did not show up. So he ended up leaving a voicemail again on Chavo's cell phone, and he said that it's fine, I'm fine. I've got a flight booked the next morning at 8 a.m. and I will be there the Sunday morning. So, of course, which was an important day. And during this time, Benoit called and left a voicemail for an unknown friend. Now, we don't actually know who he phoned and who he left that voice note to, which is a little bit eerie when we get into what actually happened on that day. So, 23rd, he's acting a little bit strange, but it's not, he's stressed. He's going through it. If what he's saying...
He's a wrestler in the pre-Benoit era. He's probably just overworked.
Yeah, it can be pushed off. It's fine. So on the Sunday, on June 24th, he sends 5 text messages to co-workers between the minutes, I should say, 3:51 a.m. and 3:58 a.m. And these text messages were sent from Chris and Nancy's cell phones. 4 of them were actually about his address, telling his friends, his people, where his house was, and to go and check on the family dogs that he locked out in the area by the pool. If any of you have ever received a text like this, God forbid, by the way, but that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. If you would be thinking, I need to get a welfare check, I need to get over there as soon as possible. He's going through it right now. That's... Especially at that time of the morning as well.
Because if he started it with "I'm in the hospital," then you could write it off. Mm-hmm. At that point, you could write it off. But the fact that he's not saying anything.
Yeah. And he'd sent these texts that I've just mentioned. He'd sent these to Chavo and another WWE referee who is called Scott Armstrong. Does that name ring a bell to you? Yeah. And these were the 2 recipients of these text messages. And this is insane. But Chavo was actually woken up by these text messages and he saw them and he went back to sleep. Could you imagine if he'd have called him or I don't know. It's not his fault. Of course, it's not his fault. Of course, I'm not blaming him, but like, I bet that eats him up a little bit. Like, that genuinely is like, he missed a chance. I mean, maybe there was nothing that could have been done anyway, you know, but it's definitely, yeah, he went back to sleep. And the reason why he went back to sleep was because he was going to see him at 8 a.m. that morning. He was going to pick him up from the airport. He'll ask him then. Yeah. It's fine. Again, reasonable reaction. That's, you know, that's totally fine. But, of course, that morning, 8 a.m. rolls around and he does not board that flight. He does not get on that flight. He does not get off that flight. And as you can imagine, I can imagine that his heart sank. Chavo's heart was probably like, fuck.
And this was the point where WWE started to worry.
Yeah, well, the reason why he was actually like, he was meant to be going to a show, wasn't he?
Yeah, there was a pay-per-view show, so their biggest shows of the month. Where all the titles were on the line, all of that stuff. So all eyes are on it. You know, you WWE champion will be there defending. Like at that show, I'm pretty sure John Cena was defending the WWE Championship. That's how big this event was.
So they needed him. They needed him there.
Because one of the matches they had was because at this point ECW was now owned by WWE. Mm-hmm. So he was fighting up and coming wrestler CM Punk, who had just started his career.
Oh, love you, CM Punk.
And it was going to be CM Punk versus Chris Benoit for the ECW World Championship.
Wow.
But he never showed up.
Yeah, he didn't show up.
And WWE were panicking because they're like, why?
Where is he?
Why is he not showing up?
But they were probably panicking for reasons not of concern. Probably just like, this is going to lose us money.
Probably at first, and then they probably started speaking, and then.
So, 25th of June, 2007.
Oh, sorry, I meant to add on. Benoit was supposed to win that match as well.
Yes.
He was supposed to become the world champion of ECW. Wow. So that also made them panic more.
So June 25th rolls around. It's a Monday, which is Monday Night Raw, right?
Yeah, Monday Night Raw.
Yeah. And show of the week. WWE had grown really concerned about Chris by this point. They couldn't get hold of him. No one could get hold of Nancy.
Chavo at this point.
And obviously,
reach out.
No one knew what to do. He's MIA. So they actually, for once, did the right thing and called for a welfare check on Chris. And what they found when they went into the house is genuinely something out of nightmares. Yeah,
the police officers.
I don't think anyone, including WWE, police, whatever, I don't think they were expecting to see what they did. So police arrive at his home in Fayetteville, Georgia, and they are able to gain access to the home. I'm going to assume through the garage door that was left unlocked because Chris had told Chavo that this door was unlocked to gain access, probably for the dogs. Probably for the dogs. So they go inside this property, and what they find is genuinely out of nightmares. They go in and they find the bodies of Chris, Nancy, and Daniel. All of the family completely wiped out.
In separate rooms.
Separate rooms, all completely dead. And this was at 2:30 p.m. Now, keep that time in mind. Keep the dates and times in mind as we go into this.
The early afternoon.
It gets a little bit confusing, but we'll explain it as we go on. But police get there. They realise they're all dead, and they're all pronounced dead at the scene. There was nothing that could be done to any of them to save them. So, horrific scenes. And it was reported that Nancy, her body was actually found wrapped in a blanket with a Bible placed beside her. And Daniel, who was just 7 years old, was found in his bedroom, in his bed. Again, a Bible on the bedstand. Fucking weird, right? Chris was found hanging from his pull-down lap machine in the home of his gym. So you come into this and you think, oh my god, they've been murdered. Yeah, they've been murdered. Someone's come in here and they've
major wrestler.
Yeah,
somebody with half money.
You know, what's going on? Has someone found out that the door's been unlocked? Like, but why? What's the significance of the Bibles? You know, what the fuck is going on here? And this information was then passed on to WWE about an hour later.
Going on air at 8 p.m.
Yeah, they were going on air at 8 p.m. and they get this news around 4 p.m, I want to say. Between 3:30 and 4 p.m, this news reaches them. And it was then broke to the world that wrestling legend and his wife and kid have just been found murdered in their home. Which, wrestler or not, this story's horrendous. Like, it's
some form of
awful.
celebrity murdered in their house.
Yeah, and Vince McMahon, again, feel like I need to preface, piece of shit, gathers...
Vince, there's one rule is that he'll never stop the show.
Mm-hmm. The show must go on.
The show must go on.
Which is important, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But again, piece of shit. He gathers all the wrestlers in a room, right? And he breaks the news that... And all he says is the Benoit family are dead. And they cancelled the show, the showing that was supposed to happen that night. The script, They didn't cancel the show, correct, but they cancelled the Monday Night Raw that was scheduled for that evening, and instead they replaced it with a touching tribute to Chris Benoit. Which they always do. Which sounds fine.
Yeah, they always do for wrestlers.
Yeah, lovely idea. Gorgeous idea. Really sweet, you know. I kind of hope... I've not seen it, but there is clips of it available.
It's hard to find.
It's for... And we'll come back to why it's so hard to find, but I really hope that Nancy was mentioned in this, but I have a horrible feeling it was about him and not her.
She worked for WCW, so Vince wasn't mentioning her.
About right. So, yeah. All amazing, all going well. Well, I wouldn't say amazing, but all, you know... It's being handled,
not
it's respectful.
Close,
it's, you know... And it wasn't until... the final hour of this live broadcast that reports start coming in that something's not quite right with this case. Police start to investigate. Obviously, they'd found the bodies hours prior.
And there would have been people on the scene.
By this point, it's like 11, 10 at night. Yeah. And they start to realise that this wasn't some kind of tragic accident or break-in or anything like that. In fact, Chris was responsible for all 3 of the deaths in that house. And what makes this even crazier, if you want to take this part, because I couldn't believe this when you told me this.
Yeah. So before the show began, probably about 6.
Yeah.
Because they'd obviously all been in there, but the report just came out. All the wrestlers were kind of talking about it because they were a bit uneasy about going forward with the show. Because obviously, you know, their friend has
just died.
And WWE Hall of Famer, JBL, who at the time was a wrestler, quite a big wrestler, and is now a commentator and works with the company. So quite a high up guy who could go up to Vince and speak to him one-on-one and, you know, get a straight answer out of him. Just started speaking with The Undertaker, obviously. One of the more known wrestlers.
Everyone knows The Undertaker.
Who had the same level as him, where he could just speak to him, and they would get stuff done. And they just started thinking about, what if Chris did it? Because they all had signs of concern.
They had a feeling, didn't they?
Because Chris... A few have said this, but since Eddie Guerrero died in 2005, because Eddie and Chris were like that.
Yeah.
Hence why he was so close with Charlotte.
Yeah.
Chris was never really the same. Which we'll come back to as to why he wasn't really the same. So people always just felt a bit worried for him.
Yeah.
They'd always feel a bit uneasy just thinking he might need help. And they just started floating around, what if Chris did it? Because he was found hanging on his machine. That looks a lot more deliberate than everything else that happened. He wasn't all there. Obviously, he's a big guy. He can do what he wants. So JBL, The Undertaker, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, because they found him on the way to Vince's office, went over to Vince and pretty much laid all this down. And Vince replied of, what do you want me to do? We have to go on the information that we have, and if it changes, we'll change.
Oh my
and just
God.
Took them out of his
But
office.
that gets a little bit more eerie as we go along, though.
But that really encapsulates Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that's the type of person he is. He's a piece of shit. He's a genuine cunt.
I think there's the quote, and it's Vince doesn't see black or white, he just sees green. He'll just do anything if he gets him the money.
Yep. So, what on earth happened? Genuinely, what on earth happened over the course of that weekend? Something had happened from that first phone call of him claiming food poisoning. Something was going down, and what he was saying was bullshit. So, over the course of the weekend, Chris took it upon himself to end the lives of his wife and son, and police actually believe that Nancy died as early as the 22nd of June, which is the Friday? Or would that be the Thursday?
No, the Friday.
The Friday?
24th is Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
So the Friday. It goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I believe.
Yeah, that is insane. So when he was phoning to say that they had food poisoning, Nancy was already dead. Where was Daniel? did Daniel witness it? Did he see? That's something that I genuinely can't bear thinking about. He was set, and we'll never know. We'll genuinely never know. Now, according to the police, they actually found that Nancy had been bound prior to her death, with her arms being restrained with coaxial cables, which is just like electrical cables, yeah. And her feet had been duct taped together. And they obviously searched the house, and they found a balled up combination of a tube sock and tape, which was found in the kitchen bin, and it appeared to be soaked in blood, like dried blood. It had blood on it, essentially. It had been used. Which obviously led police to believe that this was used as some kind of like gag or something prior to Nancy's death, which means that he cleaned up. He did what he did, tried to get rid of evidence.
He was cognitive enough.
He knew
what was going on.
And the injuries on Nancy had indicated that Chris had actually pressed his knee into her back as he suffocated her.
Which he did in the ring.
Yeah. Really? Whoa, I didn't know that. That's eerie. I don't like that. And police actually said that there was no signs of an immediate struggle, which is kind of weird, but also not. She could have been asleep. She did have.
So he was just strong. Like maybe she couldn't do anything.
She can't fight. Yeah. And there was a toxicology report that was done on Nancy that did find alcohol in her system. So she could have been a little bit intoxicated. She might have had a couple of glasses of wine. However, they are unsure if this alcohol in her system was unclear if it was a product of decomposition. So sometimes when you decompose, that can make alcohol levels come up.
Stuff in her body, but
So they don't really know if they can't use that as.
It wasn't high enough.
They can't use it as like an excuse.
Beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah. So that was kind of, one of those things that was said. And there was no evidence to suggest that Chris had sedated her. However, she did have, like, some drugs in her system, but they were, like, prescribed. And they weren't in, like, ridiculous levels. They were in, like, therapeutic levels, which is what it's described as in the media. It's like, you'd find citalopram in my system.
Somebody would have it, yeah.
Like, there was no evidence that he'd done that. So moving on to Daniel, it's believed that Daniel was killed the next day on the 23rd of June. However, police are actually unsure and aren't able to give an exact time or estimated time of death. Reasons for that can be loads of things, but it's believed that he was suffocated in his bedroom, in his bed. However, police actually only found this out during the autopsy, because when they found him, there was no, like, damage on the outside of his body. He literally just looked like he was sleeping. There was no bruises, there was nothing. He just looked like a little kid.
Chris knows how to cut the air off someone. That was part of his, his finisher.
So when his autopsy, was carried out, it was, all of his injuries were internal. However, unlike Nancy, Daniel was sedated, and he was sedated with Xanax. And it's likely, thank God, that he was unconscious when this was going on, which we can hope. That poor little kid, like, genuinely, I hope he had no idea what was going on, and he just, slipped away. But, yeah, I hope that's the case. But looking back now to when I mentioned that Chris left that first voice note on the 23rd of June at 3:30, Daniel and Nancy were already dead. He had already done it. He'd already killed them. And he had kept it up for a full day before he then did it to himself.
Yeah.
He kept it up, and they all had no idea. They had no idea. So, well, what about Chris? So police had said that Chris himself had removed the lap bar from the pull-down machine and fashioned the end of it into a noose, slipped it on his neck, and released the weights and caused him to strangle.
100 kilos.
Caused him to strangle. That was how he took himself out. So obviously when this happens, police were able to crack into his computer, and the only topic that he'd researched on his computer during the time period, which will explain the Bibles, is the biblical prophet Elijah and the resurrection of a dead child. I beg your pardon.
So once he was aware enough of what was going on.
Or aware enough in his, like, deluded state
that he could comprehend.
Yeah, however, weirdly, Nancy's sister, she claimed on a podcast that over that weekend, the search history...
So the podcast itself was with Chris Jericho, who was like a career rival of Chris.
Yeah, she claimed that that was not what was searched on Chris Benoit's laptop. And in fact, Chris Benoit had researched, quote, the quickest and easiest way to break a neck, and that Chris Benoit had then later used a towel around his neck, attached it to the handle of the machine, which he then pulled down using a very heavy weight and let go, breaking his neck instantly. And apparently that's how he died. But there's no evidence for this, so I don't know why she would say that. That's like... Why would you say that?
The cripple Benoit.
Yeah, because there was no towel.
For the cripple Benoit would know how to break a neck.
There was no towel or anything like that, and the police report that was done by the Fayetteville County Sheriff's Office states that there was no damage to his neck area other than what came from the cable around his neck. There was no... His neck wasn't broken, he'd just been strangled. But even weirder, and this is the reason why this case is genuinely this is insane. Nancy's murder was announced on Wikipedia before it was even public knowledge, before their bodies had even been found. But wait. A statement regarding Nancy's death was added to the Chris Benoit English Wikipedia article 14 hours before police discovered the bodies of Chris, Daniel and Nancy.
And was Chris even dead at this point?
Well, 14 hours from 2:30, no, probably not. They assume he died after he sent those text messages to Chavo, which was at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So what on earth's going on there? That's insane. So... This, article read, quote, so what was actually added to Wikipedia was, quote, Benoit was replaced by Johnny Nitro for the ECW World Champion match at Vengeance, as Benoit was not there due to personal issues stemming from the death of his wife, Nancy. I beg your finest pardon.
Chris was still alive at this point.
Nancy wasn't.
No.
But Chris was. That's... insane. Genuinely, this is something that, like, I can't shake. Of course, the phrase stemming from the phrase, quote, stemming from Nancy's death was added at 4:01 a.m. on the 25th of June, which was minutes after he sent those text messages. Minutes after he sent those text messages. Whereas the Fayette County Police reported the discovery of the bodies of the Benoit family at 2:30 p.m. that same day. Was Chris Benoit perhaps in communication with someone else that hasn't come forward? And again, and the reason I say this is because it gets even weirder, because the IP address of where this was added was traced for Stamford, Connecticut.
And what was it, Stamford?
Which is the location of WWE headquarters.
Because I was reading after
Vince McMahon.
But they'd seemingly traced it to just some kid.
Well, funny you should say that, because hold on a minute. So after the news of the early death notice reached mainstream media, the anonymous poster accessed Wikinews to explain that his edit was a huge coincidence and nothing more. Oh my god, I can't believe I predicted this. It's crazy. Now, they did actually find the person responsible. If you're listening to this,
teenager.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, me and Tobias are both using very heavy finger quotes right now, because this guy was a 19-year-old student named Matthew Greenberg, and police detectives seized computers and equipment from Matthew, and they actually found that he was uninvolved in the death. He wasn't involved in Nancy. He genuinely didn't know.
He didn't know anything.
And he had no charges pressed on him. That's suspicious. That is the most... I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer. That's cover-up.
Yeah.
I don't care. That is the most blatant cover-up I've ever seen. That's crazy. What, this 19-year-old just has to take the fall? He probably got a load of hush money for taking the fall. And he got no criminal charges for it?
In 2007? This isn't...
Yeah, this isn't now, is it? This is 2007. Wikipedia wasn't a big thing either.
No, Chris...
It's important to mention that.
lived, in like a detached house in rural
But
Georgia. It wasn't like New York City where someone might know.
He'd claimed that he had found rumours online about it, and he was like, yeah, I'm just going to add it. Because apparently this was his thing. He'd done this before, allegedly. But yeah, I'm not the only one that believes this is a cover story, by the way. This is quite a big thing in WWE that, people claim that that's cover story. Yeah. There's definitely... The fact that the IP address just happened to be the same IP address of the WWE headquarters, and you expect me to believe that that's just a coincidence.
And there's an unknown recipient of text messages.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah! Oh, my God, yeah, the voice note. I didn't even put two and two together. You're right. See, I knew bringing you on this podcast would be a good idea.
My inquisitive analysis.
So, why? The question of why obviously remains, because why does a man who was relatively young, was he only in his 40s?
I think he was 40 flat.
Yeah, why does he go on to do this? To kill his family?
No, he's 40.
Yeah.
If you think about it, he's a 40-year-old man who's healthy, in a good state. Why? Well, this is what came out later. Well, you'd think
it's widely believed that because Chris had been whacked on the head so much,
one of his finishing moves was a diving headbutt.
Yeah, he had so many untreated concussions throughout his life and career that it's believed that this is what led to this very unstable mental state.
Because it would.
Well, yeah, of course. People get hit to the head once and they change personality. It's a very, very real thing. And he's probably had hundreds of concussions throughout his life. So they were actually able to conduct tests on Chris's brain.
Because I can't remember the name, but this became a
huge story. This is the guy who did it, head of neurosurgery at West Virginia University, who is Julian Bales. And he showed, after, he took out the brain, he researched it, did whatever they do. And he said that Chris's brain was so severely damaged that it resembled the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Holy shit. Other tests that were conducted on Chris's brain tissue revealed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Probably completely mispronounced that.
Great job.
Don't mock me.
No, I was doing the opposite. I was doing better.
And he had actually had damage to all 4 lobes of the brain and the brainstem. He was fucked. He was absolutely...
And this was I don't know the exact weights, but, a 6 foot...
Yeah, and
6 foot, 100 kilo
man. Interestingly enough as well, Nancy had actually filed for divorce from Chris in May of 2003. And she had alleged... domestic abuse, but for some reason she withdrew this filing and restraining order just 3 months after she filed it.
So he'd been violent.
He'd done it before, but for some reason she decided to give him another chance, which she shouldn't. She should have ran. She should have took Daniel and got the fuck out of there. It's not her fault, of course, but I wish she did. Yeah. She didn't deserve this. Now, steroids were also found in Chris's household, and this was another...
always an issue.
Yeah, and this was another really interesting argument that I found as well. So, media organisations, as you can imagine, because people were a little bit ignorant to steroids, they didn't really know...
The media have been doing this with WWE since...
They've been doing it forever in sports. It's not just WWE.
Yeah.
So...
Because Vince nearly got the down because of it.
So some media organisations decided to hypothesise that this was a, quote, steroid-induced rage, and this was the cause of his actions, as some doctors have linked steroid use to uncontrollable anger and other psychological issues such as paranoia. But WWE released a press statement, and obviously they disputed this claim, and I I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I agree with the statement. I don't think it was roid rage. And the reason why is because they said, quote, "The physical findings announced by authorities indicate deliberation, not rage." I mean, that's not a blind rage. You killed your wife on Friday and then your son on Saturday and then yourself on Sunday. That's not a blind rage. That's...
planned.
Yeah, or planned, or like psychosis. Yeah. You're in a period of psychosis. You don't know what you're doing. That's not steroids.
Like, I never thought I'd say this, but Vince McMahon really took the moral high ground here. Because it could have just shifted the blame. But he could have just said it was steroid rather than going the underlying issues that our industry has.
But this statement, and this is where this statement loses me, because this statement goes on to state, and I quote, the wife's, yeah, not Nancy, not her name.
Not Miss Benoit.
Not, yeah. The wife's feet and hands were bound and she was asphyxiated, not beaten to death. By the account of the authorities, there were substantial periods of time between the death and the death of the wife and the death of the son. Not Daniel, the son. Again, suggesting deliberate, not rage. The presence of a Bible by each is also not an act of rage, which is fair enough, but referring to the victims in this situation as the wife and son is...
disrespectful.
Yeah, like, just if you said Daniel and Nancy, everyone would know what you were talking about. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to disrespect them. But in a 2013 interview, again, Nancy's sister stated that she actually believed that Chris Benoit had blacked out, and that's what caused him to murder Nancy. And then maybe he panicked and then did the same to Daniel and then himself after realising what he did. But the thing is, we'll actually never know. We'll genuinely never know why he chose to do what he did. But interestingly, her sister-in-law, Sandra, she's called Sandra, I should probably mention that, she actually stated that the medical examiner who examined Chris's body stated that Chris would have only had 10 more months to live anyway due to an enlarged heart. Which is, yeah. She also stated that Chris was contemplating retiring and opening a wrestling school, but decided to continue due to being in one of the main events. And that was the only reason why he carried on. Yeah. Insane. It genuinely, it could have gone so different if things had been different. But again, so you're probably wondering, again, all this crazy shit that's happened, why have we never heard of him? Why have I never heard of Chris Benoit? I know a little bit about WWE, but why have I never heard of him? So yeah, why? Why have we never heard of him, Tobias?
Well, the reason is, WWE were kind of between a rock and a hard place, weren't they? What the fuck do we... Especially after they'd already...
And this is like the first time something as serious as this
This wasn't happened. A death. This wasn't like when Eddie Guerrero died, where it was just a man unfortunately had health complications.
No, this is like one of their people has wiped out himself and his entire family, including his 7-year-old son. Like...
Because of...
I wonder why he didn't take out the dogs. Like, he was there enough to not kill the dogs, and that's...
I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but his job wasn't to beat up dogs.
Yeah, true.
His job was to fight people.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So yeah, why do you not know of him? And that's because Monday Night Raw, they did their really poorly aged memorial show.
Which is, sorry to interrupt you there, but which is actually completely copyrighted. Everything from that is copyrighted. I tried to include it. You
can find one image.
Yeah, you can find a clip. You can find the clip of Vince and then a couple of clips of John Cena and other wrestlers, but apart from that, it is completely copyrighted. So if you do want to go and watch it, I can't feature it here, so go and have a look for yourself.
And then the other reason you can't see it is because this is the point I'm going to make, is that ECW aired on Tuesdays. They have Raw on Monday, ECW on Tuesday, SmackDown on Friday. So the day after it had been announced that he murdered his family, all that happened was Vince went on the air before the show had started, then essentially apologised, saying that they didn't know the facts, said that may the victims rest in peace, and that was it. They've never mentioned Chris Benoit ever again on WWE television since this point.
Even till to this day.
Even to this day. Wow. They have not mentioned Chris Benoit. To the point,
but that's not all that they did, though, was it?
To the point that they had the WWE Network, before that
was the little app, wasn't it?
Yeah, before they do on Netflix, they used to put all of their shows on their own app. And you could go onto the shows and, you could cycle through matches, like, say, John Cena fights Randy Orton. And it'd say John Cena versus Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Any match with Chris Benoit
was blank.
It would say the name of the person versus then nothing.
Yes, I remember you showed me.
It would
Because I remember
say Kurt Angle v.
And then nothing.
Just nothing.
Yeah, his name. And if you searched his name, nothing will come up.
But it'd still be there.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're not going to... It's middle of a show, you can't just cut out a whole show. They'll never mention him.
Nope.
To the point that the most recent pay-per-view, the John Cena AJ Styles match, had a bunch of throwbacks to other wrestlers who they all loved and all respected for their careers. And one of them is that AJ Styles did Benoit's finisher move, but not as a homage to Benoit, but as a homage to someone else who did the finisher move.
Okay.
However, commentary team just didn't speak about it.
Really?
They would speak about every other finish, but they did not want to get their fingers in that one because they just...
It's like...
It's easier not to touch it than even
it's like a taboo, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like they're genuinely...
Because wrestling's obviously fictional, it's very much like they just pretend he never existed. Wow. They'll talk about the history of things.
Nancy. Did they do the same to Nancy? I mean, obviously it wasn't WWE.
But WWE own WCW now.
Okay.
So they have access to all of that. And I think they just don't mention it because if you mention Nancy, you've got to mention Chris.
The room, yeah.
And they just don't want to do it. Wow. And that's the weird part of it. That's kind of, maybe, that's the debate part. That's maybe the bad part, maybe the good part. What else would they do?
I know, it's a touchy subject.
Obviously, the good they did is that they completely rehauled WWE.
Yeah.
They have mandatory CTE procedure now. And as a response, any time they even think that you've got a concussion,
you're out.
That's it. The match is over.
Yeah.
You have to go to the back, you have to get checked, and then you're probably going to have to sit out for a little bit just so they can double check. And, Jey Uso, who I compared Chris to in terms of, like, career status, had this. Well, a few weeks ago during a match, he hit someone in the back with a chair, bounced off and hit him in the head, and cut his head open.
Shit.
Obviously, it was an accident, didn't mean it to happen. But then because of that, the ref had to pretty much plan around it, make sure the match ended super quick. And then Jey was sent out to the back, got medical checked, and wasn't allowed to fight for a couple of weeks. Whereas in the pre-Benoit era, if you were cut in the head, the ref would probably ask if you can stand.
And if you can stand, you're good to go.
It's good to go, and then you'd be back on the next night.
Wow.
And
so it's one of the...
Furthermore, as I said, chair to the head, you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to hit each other in the head anymore.
Yeah, and it's something that I've noticed as well. Like, I remember I've said to you, like, offhand, like, your head's not even touching it, and you'll go, yeah, because of Chris. And I'm like, oh, because it's like all hands, isn't it? Yeah. They put their head touches their hands.
Like I will do like a demonstration with this.
Oh my god.
It's like, if I was going to hit you in the head, it'd be like, you put your hand up, don't you? But...
Yeah, and it would be that,
Whereas back in the day, it would just be very much...
There you go.
Very much just be straight on the head.
There you go. Demonstration for you.
You'll be able to find, like... If you search, like, Mick Foley chair to the head, there'll be 500 clips of Mick Foley getting his head... Yeah. The chair would have Mick Foley's head shaped into it.
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like when any murder happens, people learn lessons from it, but, I mean, it's a shame that...
Sorry, I meant to say as well, in the state of it today... But we're kind of... This isn't WWE, but the band Our Lady Peace, who did Chris's theme.
Okay.
And the band really attribute it that their career got bigger because it was WWE.
For context, by the way, wrestlers have, like, songs that they walk out to. Like John Cena has...
Like a UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Or a boxer.
Carry on.
And it was only this year, in February, but for the first time in 15 years, they performed Chris Benoit's theme again.
Shit. Do you reckon that was 15 years is a very specific time? Do you reckon it was the contract that they couldn't?
It was their 30th anniversary as a band. So they were like, this is the song that got us big, blah, blah. And they did a statement before it saying, obviously, that this is why they didn't do it. But they still played it, despite the fact they personally wiped it from their set lists because they didn't like the association. And even today, Kurt Angle, who I mentioned earlier, one of the greatest of all time, was on wrestling podcast called Insight, where, wrestlers will come on, chat about their career, just talk about their entire career. And Kurt was asked the question about Benoit, because Benoit was his career rival. Obviously, how would you have your great rival that you can't talk about? And Kurt still talks about him in, like, a really conflicted way. Well, I mentioned, like, I understand it's horrible, everything they've done,
but that's my friend.
But they're ruining careers.
Yeah.
Like, you can't talk about his WWE career. You can't talk about Chris Jericho. Can't talk about Eddie Guerrero because you're saying these people are great, but then half of their matches you can't watch anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's not good because it's not good, but it's the positives that come out of it is it actually took people's health. Since. Yeah, it's nothing like that. Also,
as well
since.
As the headshot CT procedure.
Yeah,
wrestlers just don't fight as much anymore.
Yeah,
because they just don't want them to hurt them, and it's made the industry a lot safer. You get a lot more people going to age 50 now, still fighting.
Yeah, well,
John Cena is retiring because he wants to.
Touchy subject.
Yes, don't bring that up. But he's retiring because he wants to try before he can.
Yeah.
But he's 47 now, and he can still do it.
Yeah.
He's still going, and he wants to try because he wants to get ahead of the curve. But before then,
so
Chris was 40 and had 10 months to live.
Yeah, that's insane.
Whereas John Cena's 47, he's still in the ring.
Yeah, he's still doing it.
You know,
and he's fine.
He's retiring because he wants to.
Yeah, he's the goal.
He's the goal.
But a memorial for Nancy and Daniel took place in Daytona Beach in Florida on the 14th of July 2007, and both Nancy and Daniel were both cremated, and their ashes were placed in starfish-shaped urns and were given to Nancy's family. But Benoit was also cremated following a private memorial service on the 6th of August 2007. However, his ashes, the location of his ashes have obviously, never been disclosed. Like, if he gets buried, it's going to get trashed. Like,
people might go to it for celebration.
Yeah, I do feel for him in a way, I really do. But at the same time, fuck you. Yeah. Fuck you.
Because
they did not deserve that. Fuck you for that.
But his brain was mush from 20 years.
Yeah, and that is like, that's the case.
Yeah.
That's it. I have lots of final thoughts. What about you?
I think the touchy subject that some talk about, and I do agree with them, is that this was going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. Someone was going to... The industry, since the steroid scandals I was talking about earlier, the whole point of it was that wrestlers were dying in their 30s. Yeah. And their 40s because it was unhealthy. Yeah. They were wrestling probably about 6-7 days
beating
a week.
Each other, yeah.
Beating the shit out of each other.
Wasn't as much of an art form as it is now, is it? Yeah.
And then taking these steroids because their body's obviously just getting slammed around 20 minutes a day. Yeah. They can't take it. They're going to die early. They're going to die young and their brain's going to be messed up. Yeah. Whereas now, because of this, because it's no longer a recommendation, you have to. You can't wrestle 6 days a week because you're going to end up like this. Mm-hmm. Well, from researching this, a lot of people don't actually believe that Chris did it himself. No. They believe that Chris was murdered and this was a cover-up. This was just all a big setup. And that was something that I noticed when I covered this. Yes. So I covered this video. I remember when I first covered this video and I came to you and I was like, I can't believe that. I had quite a few people that were like upset in the comments that I had like reiterated the story, and you were like, yeah, people genuinely believe that Chris didn't do it. Yeah, that Chris didn't do it. And do you know why that is, or is that just something that's no people just not wanting to believe that the favourite can do something like that? Yeah, in a sport could do something like that. And of course, you have the theories about Vince knowing what had happened. We've kind of discussed that. Like that. The IP address. Vince, I think I put it on here. Yeah. Like, as I said, the show goes on, and Vince took this to the extreme. That Friday Night SmackDown, I think it was on Thursday at the time, but Friday Night SmackDown was the first public gathering en masse after 9/11. Wow. That's how extreme Vince took it. Okay. So, like, he was like, no, the show will go on. We need it. And then during COVID, he took as long as possible before shutting it down, and even then, WWE didn't stop. Every week, people would be in the ring fighting. Really? Yeah, it continued all throughout COVID. There just wouldn't be an audience. Okay, right. And they'd be like tested. Yeah, there'd just be, Roman Reigns. Yeah. And a ref. And Seth Rollins and the ref. That would be it. Right. But Vince will never stop. So it's understandable. I mean, he has but like... Yeah. Because it's kind of... People will go, oh, but if Vince knew, why would he keep going? Well, Vince will never stop. There was I can't remember who said it, but it was something like, if Vince died just before it went on air in front of everybody, his dying wish would be to keep the show going on. Yeah. Like, that's how much. Yeah. And then actually, the most extreme example would have been Owen Hart. Yeah, of course. Maybe that could be another episode. Yeah. Yeah, pause that thought. Maybe that could be another episode into this little podcast that we've got. Yeah, if you want to have a horrible wrestling story again, look into Owen Hart. Yeah.
And if you want to hear us cover that,
the theories
feel
of
free.
that one are much more.
Yeah.
They're much more.
But I guess the last thing that I want to talk about before we end this is the Hall of Fame controversy, because people are, calling for Nancy to be in there. And why isn't she?
3 schools of thought. There's don't, which is what John Cena thinks. It's just don't touch it. I think talking about it is just
opening a can of worms.
Don't talk about it. Then there's the people who think that Chris should be in it. Just flat out, Chris should be in it. And the main person who believes this is Chris's son, David. Who is from another marriage. He's younger, but the issue with David is that he wants to be a wrestler.
And no one will go near him.
And nobody wants to go near him because the kind of work. Nobody wants to be known as the company that hired a Benoit.
Yeah, nobody, and for his son, nobody wants to be known as the guy whose dad murdered his family because of his health being neglected, And
then the other one is Nancy should be put in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Too right.
Yeah.
Of course she should.
Because Mick Foley, another Extreme wrestler who kind of had the opposite.
Yeah.
He's completely salient. Like, he has health issues, but he's a big advocate of safety in wrestling for it. Talks about it should just be away with WWE to pay respect.
Yeah.
As an apology for what.
Because it's their fault. At the end of the day, they had to blame. If there is a blame game, it's obviously Chris. But if you want to point fingers at the higher-ups...
It's the industry as a whole.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that Chris Benoit will be remembered as the taboo wrestler. The
one you
the elephant in the room. Yeah.
And it'll always be that way.
Yeah, it will. So, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. How do you feel? How do you feel?
Good.
Did you enjoy that?
It got better as it went on.
Well, if you enjoyed, please let us know. And if you have any requests, please leave them in the comments or DM me them on Instagram. The links will be below in the link tree, so feel free, help yourself, go and follow my socials.
Can I say the thing? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button.
Please never say that again. And if you enjoyed listening to this video or podcast, let us know. I really hope you enjoyed. But until next time, stay safe.